My brother laughed when our grandmother announced she was leaving the bakery to him. It wasn't a small laugh either. It was the kind that fills a room, the kind that assumes everyone agrees. I was standing 3 feet away, holding a paper cup of bad funeral home coffee, and he didn't even glance at me. That moment happened 11 months ago. I've thought about it almost every day since. My name is Vivian, and I'm 34 years old. I worked, as the head baker at Hartwell's Family Bakery, a shop my grandmother, Doris Hartwell, opened in 1987 in Clarksburg, West Virginia. For the last 6 years, I was the one who got there at 4 in the morning. I was the one who figured out why the cream cheese frosting kept separating in summer. I was the one who stayed late on Thursdays to prep the weekend rush and drove 40 minutes each way without complaining. Because Grandma couldn't afford to pay me what the job was actually worth. And I didn't ask her to. My brother's name is Spencer. He's 38, lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, and runs what he calls a consulting practice that, as far as I can tell, mostly involves taking long lunches and sending emails that other people follow up on. Spencer came home for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the occasional birthday. He brought nice wine when he did. He told Grandma her pie crust was the best in the state, and she believed him. And honestly, it was hard to blame her, because Spencer has always known exactly what to say and exactly when to say it. I loved my grandmother. I want to be clear about that before I say anything else. Doris Hartwell was a woman who got up at 5 a.m. until she was 81 years old. She had a specific way of folding dish towels that she tried to teach me 4 separate times. She kept butterscotch candies in a ceramic rooster on the counter and refused to explain why the rooster. She was stubborn and funny, and she smelled like fake extract and Jean Natte, and she is the reason I became a baker at all. She was also, for most of my adult life, harder on me than she was on anyone else. Not in a cruel way. More in the way that people are harder on the ones they actually trust. At least, that's what I told myself. When Spencer forgot to send a thank you card after she sent him money for his birthday, she called it an oversight. When I showed up 20 minutes late to Christmas dinner, because my oven had broken mid-batch and I was trying to salvage the rolls I'd promised to bring, she said, in front of everyone, "You know how I feel about punctuality, Vivian." Spencer patted my shoulder after and whispered, "You know how she is." Like I needed the translation. After Grandpa passed, that was 7 years ago, the spring before I came back to Clarksburg, the bakery started struggling. Nothing dramatic, just the slow kind of struggling that happens when a small-town business loses the person who handled its books. Grandma was extraordinary behind the counter, but she'd always let Grandpa manage the numbers. And suddenly there were no numbers being managed at all. I came back from Pittsburgh to help. I told myself it was temporary. That first year, I spent 3 weeks reorganizing the ordering system alone. I renegotiated with 2 of the flour suppliers. I built a relationship with a local coffee roaster and started offering drinks, which added almost 18% to monthly revenue. I redid the display cases because the old layout was hiding the high-margin items at eye level, behind things people were going to buy anyway. None of this was glamorous. Most of it was invisible. Grandma said good thinking when I told her about the coffee. Spencer, on his next visit, said the lattes were a cute idea. I stayed. What started as temporary became 6 years. Grandma's health started declining about 2 years ago. Nothing sudden, just a gradual stepping back. She stopped coming in on Fridays. Then Mondays. By last spring, she was at the bakery maybe one morning a week, mostly to sit at the corner table with her coffee and watch. I would catch her looking at the cases sometimes, at the laminated croissants and the cardamom, morning buns, and the maple-glazed old-fashioneds. And she'd get a particular expression on her face that I never quite knew how to read. Proud, maybe. Or something more complicated than that. She never told me what she was planning. I didn't ask, because it felt disrespectful, like circling. I assumed she would do what seemed obvious. I assumed a lot of things. Grandma passed on a Tuesday in March, quietly, at home, which was how she would have wanted it. The funeral was the following Saturday. People came from all over Clarksburg and the surrounding towns. People I barely knew. People who told me stories about her I'd never heard. A woman named Gretchen told me Grandma had quietly paid 3 months of her rent after her husband left back in 2003. I hadn't known that. I don't think Grandma would have wanted me to. Spencer flew in Thursday night. He looked good, expensive haircut, new coat, the kind of effortless that requires considerable effort. He hugged me at the door and said, "How are you holding up?" in a tone that meant he'd already moved past the question before I could answer. His wife, Melanie, was warm and kind and kept touching my arm. I liked Melanie. The meeting with the estate attorney was scheduled for the Monday after the funeral. His name was Mr. Tate, Glenn Tate, a quiet man in his 60s who had handled Grandma's affairs for the better part of 15 years. He had an office above the insurance agency on Jefferson Street, which I'd driven past 1,000 times without ever going inside. Spencer and I sat across from his desk on chairs that were comfortable in a deliberately neutral way, like the chairs were trying not to take sides. Mr. Tate laid out the basics first. The house, which Grandma had owned free and clear, was to be split equally between Spencer and me, which surprised nobody. There was a modest savings account that would be divided the same way. There were some personal items: the ceramic rooster, the good china, a ring that had been her mother's, that she'd specified individually by name. She left me the rooster. I held it together for about 30 seconds after he said that. And then I didn't. Spencer passed me a tissue without a word, which was the kindest he'd been to me all weekend. Then, Mr. Tate picked up a second folder, thinner than the first. He set it on the desk between us without opening it immediately, which is a thing I've noticed lawyers do when they want a moment to settle the room. "With regard to Hartwell's Bakery," he said. Spencer sat up slightly. "I noticed, because I was watching him. Your grandmother came to me approximately 14 months ago to make some changes to her estate plan," Mr. Tate said. "She was specific that she didn't want these changes discussed with either of you until after her passing. I honored that request." Spencer said, "Of course, in the easy way he says everything." Mr. Tate opened the folder. He put on his reading glasses. He was quiet for a moment in the way that people are quiet when they are about to say something that will rearrange a room. The bakery, including the business entity, its assets, its existing accounts, its equipment, and the property at 412 Maple Street on which it operates, is to pass in full to Vivian. I heard Spencer exhale. It wasn't dramatic. It was the sound of air leaving a balloon slowly, almost without intention. I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure I was breathing. Mr. Tate continued. He was very good at continuing. "Additionally, your grandmother left a letter, addressed to both of you jointly, to be read at this meeting." He slid a white envelope across the desk. My grandmother's handwriting on the front. Spencer and Vivian, together. The handwriting was steady. She must have written it a while ago, when her hands were still reliable. Spencer picked it up. He looked at me. I nodded, because I couldn't speak yet. He opened it carefully, which surprised me. Spencer does most things quickly. He unfolded the pages. There were 3, and for a moment just held them. Then he read aloud. My grandmother's voice came through the paper so completely that it almost broke me open. "I know that sounds like something people say. I mean it literally." I had to close my eyes. She wrote that she knew she hadn't always made things easy for me. She wrote that she had been, as she put it, harder on the ones I counted on most, and I was wrong to do that without ever telling you why. She said that running a business meant understanding that one day you wouldn't be there to run it anymore, and she had spent the last 2 years watching to see who understood that the way she had. She said she was proud of Spencer in the ways a grandmother is proud of a grandchild, who moves through the world with confidence. She said she was proud of me in a different way. In the way she was proud of herself, which she admitted she had never said out loud and should have. She said the bakery needed someone who would be there at 4 in the morning. Someone who would care about the croissants, not because customers expected them, but because they were worth caring about. Someone who thought about the ordering system and the display cases and the coffee roaster, not because they were told to, but because they couldn't help it. She said, "I've known for a long time that person was you, Vivian. I should have told you sooner. I'm telling you now." Spencer finished reading. He set the pages on the desk very carefully, face down, like he was tucking them in. He was quiet for what felt like a long time. Then he said, "She wasn't wrong." It was not the reaction I had expected. I looked at him. He was staring at the desks. He had the expression of someone rearranging something inside themselves, something that had been in the wrong place for a while. "I knew you ran that place," he said. "I knew it, Viv. I think part of me didn't want to say it out loud, because then I'd have to reckon with the fact that she wasn't recognizing it the way she should have." He paused. "That wasn't fair to you. Me not saying anything. I should have. I didn't know what to do with that. I still don't, entirely." Mr. Tate gave us a few minutes before he walked us through the paperwork. There was a lot of it. The bakery had been structured as an LLC. I'd actually helped Grandma set that up 4 years ago, which I thought about briefly and then didn't say. And the transfer of ownership was already drafted. All it needed was signatures. Spencer signed where he needed to sign as a witness. His hand was steady, walking out of Mr. Tate's office onto Jefferson Street. The air was cold and gray in the way West Virginia March is cold and gray, which is a particular kind that gets into your coat. Spencer and I stood on the sidewalk for a moment without talking. He said, "You want to get lunch?" We went to a diner 2 blocks away and sat in a booth and ordered coffee and eggs and didn't talk about the bakery for most of the meal. We talked about Grandma, about the ceramic rooster, which we decided she'd bought at a flea market sometime in the mid-90s and kept out of pure stubbornness once it became clear it was ugly. About the way she'd hum while she worked, always slightly off-key, always songs from the 70s that she would never acknowledge knowing when asked directly. At some point, Spencer said, "Are you going to keep the name?" "Hartwell's?" I said. "Yeah, I hadn't thought about it. I thought about it then." "Yeah," I said. "I am." He nodded. "Good." The first morning I unlocked the bakery as its owner. It was a Wednesday in April. I'd been doing the actual work of opening for 6 years, so nothing about the physical process was different. The same key, the same door that sticks slightly in cold weather, the same smell that hits you when you step inside. Butter and coffee, and something underneath both, that I've never been able to name but associate entirely with the word home. But I stood in the doorway for an extra minute before I went in. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to feel the difference between walking into a place that belonged to someone you loved and walking into a place that now, somehow, belonged to you. I turned on the lights. I started the ovens. I got to work. I found out some things over the following weeks. One was that Grandma had been quietly maintaining a journal. Not a personal diary, more of a business journal, observations about the shop, notes on recipes she was still tweaking, ideas she hadn't implemented yet. Mr. Tate had included it with the business documents, almost as an afterthought. I read the whole thing in one sitting on a Sunday night, sitting at the corner table where she used to have her coffee. The last entry was dated about 6 months before she passed. It said, "Vivian's cardamom morning bun is better than mine was. I haven't told her. I should tell her. She hadn't told me." But she had written it down where she knew I'd eventually find it, which I have decided is a kind of telling. The other thing I found was a small notebook in the drawer under the register, separate from the journal, where she had kept track of regulars. Not officially, just for herself. Who came in on which days, what they ordered, whether they were having a hard time. Next to a name I recognized as one of our oldest customers, Mrs. Pecoraro, she had written, "Tuesday mornings, black coffee, single corn muffin. Lost her husband in February. Don't make her say it, just know." I kept the notebook. I started adding to it. The bakery is doing well. I've added 2 new employees, a woman named Angie, who has extraordinary instincts for pastry, and a kid named Dustin, who is the fastest cashier I've ever seen, and remembers every regular's order after one visit. We redid the weekend specials menu. We started doing a Thursday evening pop-up that runs until 8, which turned out to be something the neighborhood had needed for a while without knowing it. Revenue is up almost 30% from last year. Spencer came to visit in August. He brought Melanie and their 2 kids, and I kept the bakery open a little later so they could come in after dinner. His daughter, who is 7, stood in front of the display case for a full 4 minutes before selecting a lemon bar. Spencer had a maple-glazed old-fashioned and said it was the best thing he'd eaten all year. And I believed him because his face said so before his mouth did. Before they left, he found me in the kitchen. He leaned in the doorway the way he always does, arms crossed. That easy posture that I used to find aggravating and now mostly just recognize as Spencer. "She was right, you know," he said. "I know," I said. "I mean about all of it." I was rolling dough and I kept rolling it because if I stopped moving, I was going to cry and I didn't want to do that in front of him. Not because I don't trust him now, but because I wasn't ready yet. "Yeah," I said. "I know." He stayed in the doorway for another moment, then nodded and went back out to his family. People ask me sometimes, customers, mostly, or people who've heard the story, whether I was angry. Whether finding out my grandmother left me the bakery over my brother felt like justice, or vindication, or whatever word they're reaching for. They expect a certain answer, I think. Here's the honest one. The first few weeks, there was something that felt close to grief more than anything else. Not for what I didn't get. I got more than I dared to hope for. But for all the years I'd spent waiting to be seen, and the fact that she had seen me, she just hadn't said so. And now she couldn't. There's a particular loneliness in being recognized too late to thank someone for it. But then I found the notebook. And then I found the journal. And then I read the entry about the cardamom morning bun, and I sat at the corner table in the empty bakery at 10 o'clock at night, and I understood something I hadn't before. She had been telling me, not in the way I'd wanted, not out loud, not directly, not in the moments when I needed it most. But she'd been paying attention every single day, and she'd been writing it down, and she'd made sure that I would find it. My grandmother trusted me with the things she built. Not because I asked for it, not because I stayed, but because she watched, and she knew, and in the end, she did what she believed was right, even when it was hard. I think about that when I turn the key in the morning, when the ovens kick on, and the smell starts to build, and the first light comes through the front windows and hits the display case, and I have about 20 minutes before the day really starts. I think about the rooster on the counter, which is still ugly, which is staying right where it is. And I think about her writing, in her steady handwriting, on a Tuesday 6 months before she was gone. I should tell her. She told me. It just took me a little while to hear it.